Thank you, Kelly. For those who were on last Thursday, please show yourselves. If you're gonna go dark, I'm gonna go dark. Deal? Cameras on, please. Okay, I'm going dark. Okay, finally. Thank you, folks. If you could put it by gallery, then you won't have to even look at yourself if you don't want to, side by side gallery. So a couple of weeks ago, I was at my local grocery store and I overheard the clerk tell the person in front of me, "Oh, you should have been here yesterday." This woman went into the restroom and she was in there for the longest time. So after about 10 minutes, the manager went out and knocked on the door. And the woman said, "I'm just washing my hands." And so the woman comes out eventually, another 5, 6, 7 minutes later. And she said, "Well, they told me to wash my hands for 20 minutes. And that kind of triggered something in me. When you're starting to do these cases, you probably don't even know what kinds of questions to ask. I remember last week, somebody said that was their second day on the job. And that was last Thursday. So they've been here a week. So I'm assuming that most, if not all, people on this session today are new to this, have not done an actual hearing. And if I'm mistaken, please correct me. Feel free to talk. I am not intending this session to be a lecture. It is meant to be some basic training on terms that you will come across as you do SSI cases, especially. The focus is going to be on SSI related issues that are non-medical. We are going to talk a little bit about some applicable only to Title II, which is Social Security disability. So with that, I did not make these slides up. I wrote the words, and Linda Lovett, our grants manager, made it prettified. So don't give me credit, give Linda Lovett credit. Becky, you want to start us off at slide 1 or 2?
Yeah, well, this worked a minute ago, so naturally it doesn't work now.
Naturally.
I'm going to go out and go in again.
Okay. There's all the pretty faces I wanted to see.
Must have gotten frozen.
That's not page 2.
Sorry.
Uh-oh. All right, Linda didn't do such a great job. The first slide that you should be looking at, is actually has to do with the application. You apply for disability.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna look at this again, Susan.
Okay.
You go ahead and talk. I'll
when you apply for disability, back in pre-pandemic, you would do it either by walking into your local field office, Social Security office, or do it online. Now you're pretty much stuck doing it online unless you have a representative that can help you walk through the system. Every county assistance office has at least one DAP advocate, disability advocacy program, and that's a person who specifically is supposed to help people apply for and walk through the application process. So you always want to know who your DAP person is at your county assistance office. No, Linda did the wrong one. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I looked.
I'm gonna have
I went back to check what you sent me, and it's I think it's every other page or something. Do you want me to go back to your not prettified draft?
Yeah, if you would.
Okay, I'll find that. It'll take me a minute to find it, so just go ahead and talk.
So when you apply for SSI, you can only be paid from the date that you apply, and it's got to be a full month. So if you applied on April 10th, you're not going to be paid, assuming you're found disabled, until May 1st. Okay. Title II Social Security is different. They can pay up to a year prior to the application. And why would that happen sometimes? Well, a friend of mine back in December had a little too many drinks and ended up falling off of a 2-story stairwell, broken back, paralyzed from the chest down. She didn't apply until this month. Now, obviously, there's trauma involved, so she will be found disabled back to the date in December. So did you find it, Beck?
I'm looking here.
Okay. So she will be paid backward to December, even though she didn't apply until this month. Feel free to unmute yourself, because I'd rather have this be in a conversation than a discussion, than a lecture. I did not plan it to be a lecture. So in Social Security Disability SSD Title II, there is what's called a date last insured. And as I explained to clients, if you have a car, you have to pay car insurance. Once you stop paying car insurance, your insurance lapses. Same thing with Social Security. It's not as quickly as your car insurance expires, but it is going to happen eventually, usually a few years past you stop working. How we doing, Beck?
I found it. I just have to get it on the screen and get what
Okay.
I have off the screen. So I'll be with you in a minute here.
Okay.
And Susan, I'll just say, sorry, I didn't have another version, but since you requested that people be able to unmute themselves,
Yes.
I changed the feature in the system, so they should be able to do that now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Beck. Thank you,
Sure.
Kelly.
Yep.
And I see they're all jumping to unmute themselves. All right.
Okay, so now we're in the
Here we go.
now we're
Okay.
in the non-gorgeous.
Here we go.
Okay,
Now we're
here's
in the non-gorgeous.
yeah. This is
here's
plain old me. This is the real me.
Yeah, this is.
So the protective filing date, that's the date the actual application comes in. Sometimes you'll see a client get a letter from the local office saying, you called in and asked about this benefit on this day. We did not consider that an application. Technically, that's called the date of inquiry, and they're supposed to hold that as the date of application. But you won't see that happen too often. It's just a once in a blue moon kind of thing. All right, we already covered the rest. Next, Beck. Now, the next few slides are going to be SSI only. This does not apply to Social Security disability. It only applies to SSI. So any kind of income to the recipient is going to count. Unearned income and earned income. How can somebody have earned income? They could be working and still be on SSI. They would have just, very low earnings, but they would have earnings. The first $20 of unearned income is not counted, and the first $65 of wages is not counted. If you have a married couple and the spouse is not disabled, the spouse's income will count in both unearned and earned income. Now, in the
Susan,
regulations, they'll even give you some samples of how this income is computed. When you do get a notice from the local office, they'll actually do the computations towards the back of the notice. They'll say, here's your spouse's income. Here's how much by law we deducted. Here's what we counted towards you. And then here's what your benefit's going to be as a result of that computation. We really don't have much control over this. I wanted to say something earlier, which I forgot. So you have your first hearing, you get the decision, it's, yeah, my client is disabled. Judge says so. Case closed. No, case is not closed. You cannot even close the case in legal server because you have no outcome yet. You don't have any income information. You don't know how much benefits that person's going to get, yet alone any lump sum from retroactive benefits. So that's why these things, that your file is going to stay open way further than the ALJ decision. Okay, next, Becky. Okay,
Sorry, there.
You're confusing me. Okay, again, these are just words to get used to, get set in your little brains. You're not going to learn anything from this because unless you have an actual case with actual facts, with actual people, you're not going to know, you're not going to be able to learn any of this stuff. Just be aware that it's there. Sometimes income is deemed to you, as I call it. They pretend that someone's income is yours, but it's really not. You might see the word sponsor, and that would be a non-citizen. It would be what's called an ineligible spouse. That just means the spouse is not eligible for SSI. Or it may be what's called an essential person. All these can be found at the regulations I cited. And then for SSI, it's means tested. So we look at income and also we look at assets. Becky?
I just had a question for you. I was going to ask
Oh,
you.
sure. Go ahead.
Can you give me an example of unearned income? I'm going back to your spouse's or that slide. What's unearned income?
That would be like unemployment compensation, workers' compensation, anything that you get that's not from wages. Lottery winnings, like if you get the annuity, like say I get $500,000 a year. Well, first of all, you won't be eligible for SSI anymore because you don't need it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Assets. Asset limits are low, always have been. For an individual, you can't have more than $2,000 worth of goods. For a married couple, that's $3,000. Many things are exempted. Now too bad we can't do a side-by-side with the prettified version and my version. The home, the car, personal belongings, some life insurance, and irrevocable burial trust. Sometimes my clients will get a nice little lump sum of benefits, and there's because of the asset limit's $2,000, they've got, they got to spend it, but not real quick. They don't have to do it right away. Let's say they get $20,000, and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, I've got to get this down to $2,000." What kinds of? Well, first, I always ask them, "Do you need a car?" And almost always the answer is yes, I could use a car. Or yes, I can replace my car. Okay, there goes a chunk of money. Another thing is an irrevocable burial trust, prepaid funerals, so to speak. As long as you cannot convert it back to cash, it's irrevocable. And that is one of the exemptions for assets under SSI.
So Susan, does it make any difference if I have a Bentley and my house is worth $5
It does
million?
not. It does, if that's the only car you have, Bentley all you want. What if client 19-year-old's about to get a hefty compensation education award? Ooh, define that. What's a hefty compensation compensatory education fund? Like as a result of a settlement?
Yeah, he's going to settle with the school district and they're going to give him money for compensatory education because they provide
And this
him.
person is on SSI?
We're hoping that he will be soon. He was kicked off at age 18 redetermination and he has a hearing coming up.
Okay, well, for you, we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but it's called an ABLE account, ABLE, all caps. That is a state law entity. It's created by the state, and we'll get to the slide a little bit later, but as long as you're found disabled before you're 26, you can sock away quite a bit of money without it affecting any means-based benefits. That means medical assistance or SSI for educational purposes or for job training purposes. So good question. Or did you try to set me up? Throw me a softball? Okay. Next, Becky. All right. You don't see this very often, but I just want to make you aware of this. This thing does exist. It's called the conditional payment. Say I have an asset, and let's say I own some land, no house or nothing, just a piece of land. And SSI says, all right, we're going to give you 9 months to sell that asset. And you're gonna have to repay us back everything we get when you sell it, from the proceeds of the sale. But we're gonna go ahead and pay you. And if you don't sell that within 9 months, chances are you're gonna get another crack at it. Maybe not 9 months, but you're gonna get some more time to sell the asset, whatever it may be. So again, just be aware that it exists.
Susan, is this similar to, I did a medical assistance case way back when, and the house was for sale in order to, so that she could get medical assistance benefits.
Yeah.
But I remember having to do a lot of, here's all the wonderful things we did to try to sell the house. Here's the listing. Here's the, like an efforts type thing that they wanted us to show. I
think that's specific to MA. I don't believe there are any, unless I can be corrected by anyone else on here. I don't believe that there are those requirements that are as stiff as for medical assistance. You just gotta, you gotta hold out that you're going to sell the asset. You're going to do all your, do what you need to do to sell it. But I don't think you have to document it.
Okay.
Susan, we have a question.
Yeah.
What if a client who is 19 years old is about to get a hefty, whoops, sorry, somebody else just put a question in and I lost my first one. Hold on.
We already did that question, Kelly, the one you were reading.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. We got it.
We can tell who's not paying attention, Kelly.
He's got a lot coming in. There's another question though.
Good.
Yeah.
Ask more questions, the better.
Does it matter how big the property is as long as the home is on it and it is the only property? Sorry about that.
No, it could be your own little island. Does that answer the question? Acreage doesn't matter as long as the home is on it and that's the only property.
So yep, you got to thank you. That answered it.
Anything else?
Here's
I have
another, sorry.
No, go ahead, Kelly.
What if 6 family members own a second home?
What if 6 family, what?
What if 6 family members own a second home?
Who is this? Is that Deb Steves?
Yes, it is. Wow, you're good.
Here's my question. I don't type very well. So every now and then you have a person, they live in their own home.
Yeah.
But they've inherited with their brothers and sisters a second home. And 5 of those brothers and sisters don't want to sell that home. What do you do?
Well, I would spend some time looking in the Palms, the POMS. If you haven't been in the Palms yet, now would be the time to dive in. If you think the regulations are herring, wait till you get to Palms. Almost every single issue that you could even imagine is mentioned in the Palms. So without me giving you, putting us on hold for an hour to go research this for you, Deb, that's where I would start.
I've found that the only way to get out of that is to have that not have a value on that home. Like sometimes it's a piece of worthless property in Puerto Rico. In my area, for some reason, a lot of people bought property in Puerto Rico.
Huh.
I have another person who has like a little family plot in India.
Oh my.
If you can get your real estate agent somewhere to say that place has no value, then you're pretty good.
Yeah, I've actually had that same case, and it wasn't in India, but
it was for property in Puerto Rico because of the inheritance laws there. It's also in the Palms.
See, we have a Palms expert.
I just posted the undue hardship for selling a home that's owned by multiple people.
There we go. You've been doing this a while, huh, Jacob?
I have.
Yeah. Thanks for pitching here. I can't do both.
Susan, that just really confused me for a minute, and I thought you were playing a trick on us because there's a question under your name, but now I see somebody signed in using your link. So the question is, if the client assigned the life insurance policy to a funeral home, is there any way to wiggle that into the burial fund exclusion?
Yeah. As long as it's not revocable. That's the key word. It's got to not be revocable. I've won a couple of these cases. Don't know if you can hear me, statements or testimony from siblings. Yeah, that they won't help. Yeah, usually statements will do it too. And then I always tell people to make sure those statements are notarized so that we know that they're your brothers and sisters and aunts or uncles and cousins and nephews and nieces.
Susan, for those people who don't necessarily do this area of law, you want to explain where the POMs are? What
Yeah,
it
if you,
is?
here's how I get to the POMs. I type
Which
in
section am I supposed to be looking at?
POMS.SSA and there they appear. You go to the table of contents and you will think, oh, this isn't so bad until you start clicking. Because every time you click, 10 more links open up, and then you click one of those and 20 more links open up.
Is the petition?
This is where the field office staff goes when they have questions. They'll look at the POMs, and there's nothing better than calling up someone at your field office and saying, well, guess what? I found this in the POMs and I think you're wrong. And they'll say, what, me wrong? And then you tell them the POMs number, they'll look it up and they'll say, I never thought of it that way. Yep. POMs, the SSA. Do we have more questions or anything? Okay, next. Transfers of assets, just don't do it and tell your clients not to do it. It's bad. It will get them in trouble. If they have a resource, an asset, they can't just get rid of it unless it's for fair market value.
How do you establish fair market value?
Well, depending on what the asset is, it may be difficult or easy to get the value. If it's a vehicle, look in Kelly's Blue Book. Get some quotes from dealers. It depends on what the asset is. Do you have an example you want to throw at me, Becky? Really try to trip me up here?
Oh, well, I have had some issues with fair market value, more related to real estate though.
Yeah, and real estate, especially depending on where you live, if you're in a pandemic or not, you know, a lot plays into what the value of anything is anymore.
Just a comment, sorry, Carrie Smith noted in the chat box, I've had local real estate agents assist for no fee on valuing properties.
Interesting. Keep those local real estate agents. If they're doing it pro bono, more power to you. I wonder if it's an assessment or if it's just a ballpark valuing was what you're getting. But if your local office takes it, run with it. All right, ABLE accounts. I mentioned that earlier. Onset prior to age 26, no effect. Any disability related expenses. Just yesterday, I received a decision on an overpayment pre-hearing conference. And my client is blind since birth. So his onset's prior to age 26. He's on SSI. He tries to do he runs his own business out of his home. He makes very little money, less than $100 a month. But he gets his benefits on a card, on a debit card. And for why I still don't know why he does that rather than have direct deposit into a bank account. So whenever he needs an upgrade in his computer and the Braille component of the computer system, it cost him over $1,000. And he's been saving his money on his card is what he's been doing, and using other funds to pay for his computer upgrades. So he got hit with an overpayment. And so we had a personal conference, and this is of course by phone. And he's like, well, I didn't know that. I thought this was for my disability related expenses. He goes, no, that was for your SSI payments. So his SSI payments were they kept adding up. He would use some of the money, but not all. So got over $2,000, that resource limit. So now, he's got an overpayment and they wanted him to pay it back. So some of these, as I keep saying, it depends on the facts of any particular case. No two cases are the same. And until you have a case in front of you, you can't put these regulations into any perspective.
So if you're about to get close to the $2,000, can you just buy yourself a nice couch?
Yeah. Yeah. Or buy that, or get another cat or another dog and pamper it to death.
Sometimes I have my clients pay their rent forward.
Yep. That's always a good one
Yeah.
too. Always a good one.
Right
Or
now,
pay a
I've
little
actually-
extra on your utility bills, whatever it takes.
For a year after the stimulus checks come in, they get to exclude some of that money as resources too. So I've actually had a few clients go a little over 2,000, but with the stimulus exclusion,
Right.
I'm working out.
Yeah, and that's strictly pandemic related. Client should be documenting these purchases, correct? You mean for the able accounts? Yes. Or do you mean for something else? I don't want to assume you mean something. Samuel, I don't want to assume something. Are you strictly talking the able accounts?
I was specifically referring to the able accounts, but I guess I just mean in general.
Yeah, well, for instance, if you get, I've got somebody who is about to receive around $15,000 as a inheritance. My advice to her was, first of all, try to spend it, get it down to $2,000 in the same month that you get it. Number two, keep receipts for everything, because they're going to want to know. If you can't account for it, then they're going to say you still have it. Remember, means tested. Means tested. Income, assets. You got to keep under those tiny little numbers. Speaking of which, it dawned on me this morning to check what a married couple makes. A married couple, both on SSI, still are only at 83% of poverty. So these benefits are not something that you want to have. It's strictly there because you are disabled, or you are blind, or you are age 65 and older and don't have much of a work history. Okay, next. Okay, I put grown as number one. And here's where I like to open it up to discussion. What is in-kind maintenance and support, or in-kind support and maintenance? Is it money that you're actually having? Is it money that you actually get? Is it money in your pocket? No. Again, it's pretend money. If you're on SSI and you're living with other people or one other person, you've got to pay your fair share of the household expenses, rent, utilities. Okay. If you don't, you are going to get an automatic 1/3 reduction of your benefit. Had a guy last summer, just started on SSI. He lived with 2 other adults. Social Security assumed that he wasn't paying his fair share because until his SSI started, he had no income. So he was not capable of paying his fair share until his SSI kicked in. I got the 1696 in. I sent a letter to the local office. I say, he tells me he's paying his fair share. Here's a list of the household expenses divided by 3. Here's his fair share. The worker contacted the head of household, who just happens to be a colleague of mine. And she confirmed that, yes, he was paying 1/3 of all the bills related to keep the household afloat. And if you think that you might be on, you're applying for SSI and you're getting a free ride, what you might want to do, or have your attorney do, or you do for your client, is set up a simple repayment agreement. Have both parties sign off on it saying, if I am found eligible for SSI, I agree to pay you back for the months of blah, 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 at the rate of, say, $100 a month to make up for my room and board while I stay. Do I have a sample one? No, I don't. Do you have one?
I think we have one, yeah.
Why don't
We
you
can-
send it to the group when we're done, or now if you can?
Let me see, let me dig it up.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen them. But it's back in the mid-90s. I did a presentation on, we spent a whole day on just different SSI and SSD issues. And my colleague at the time told the story of she would go to this woman on SSI would go to her daughters twice a month on Sundays and have a chicken dinner. The local office found the value of that chicken dinner. They put a value on it and deducted it from her SSI monies. Now, I would hope to think those days are over. SOAR, okay, yep. Figure SOAR would have one. What Sarah sent us was a sample, the repayment agreement that I mentioned on the bottom here, a sample one. It doesn't have to be, anything intrinsic. I always suggest having both parties sign it and date it, and then stick to the agreement, because Social Security can call you on it. If they're gonna up your Social Security, your SSI to the full amount. You don't want them coming after you later on down the road and saying, hey, you were overpaid. So always give a copy to Social Security, of course, once you're found eligible for SSI.
So Susan, does it have to be 1/3 of all the expenses? How about I pay 1/4 of the rent, but a little bit more on the groceries and a little bit, I mean, does it have to be?
I think it would depend on what the math comes to. I think like if the total was a third, I mean, the
Okay.
total was a half, if it's a 2-person household.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I could look it up for you, but
Well, the
again, I
reason
have to
I'm
put you.
asking is I had a case where the client was having some difficulty convincing the relatives that the arrangement should change. Like they were happy with the way it was, and they didn't want to shift what was going on.
I gotcha.
So he was trying to figure out a different way to make it work.
Did that work?
It did eventually, but it took
Yeah.
a little, the relatives, and this is, often the case in our clients' lives, is the relatives can be like, they're like, no, it's fine the way it is. I don't trust you to pay the rent, or I don't trust you to pay me. I'm going to keep paying the rent. That was the situation in his house, that the brother wanted to make sure the rent was paid because he didn't want to get evicted. And so they had to
Gotcha.
figure something else out.
Yeah. Yeah, all kinds of issues come up. Like I said, just when that decision comes, that means nothing. Sometimes the heaviest work is yet to follow. It's figuring all this stuff out. Okay, anything else on ISM? We all hate it. We wish it would go away. 83% of poverty. Come on. All right, let's go next, Beck. All right, here's some things that can drastically cut you off, affect your eligibility. If you leave the country for over 30 days, you are no longer eligible. A dear friend of mine, a client of mine many times over, was from Russia. And she and her husband emigrated to here, and her husband ended up passing here. And several years after that, she wanted to go back home to visit with family. Well, needless to say, she ended up in the hospital back in Russia, and had some pretty bad heart problems. So she could not make it back to the US within 30 days. So having to explain to her, oh no, Allah, guess what? You must take the consequences of being sick in Russia. So she got hit with a small overpayment, and she ended up paying it back rather quickly because it was only for a month. But these little things affect eligibility. Again, it means tested, means tested, means tested. Another thing that can affect your eligibility is if you're an institution. You're not eligible if you're in prison or hospitalized or in jail. So I just got a new overpayment what's today? Tuesday, must have came Friday. I got the woman original benefits just last year. She's on disability and widows, and she got an overpayment of $14,000. Sometime in 2019, she was in jail for like 9 months. And I said, when were you in jail? She goes, well, remember when my husband died? Well, then my mom died the following week and I started drinking and I got a DUI and I had a bad lawyer. And I said, oh my God, so you spent 9 months in jail. And she said, yeah. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to send you a waiver. I'm going to send you the waiver application. And she said, what's that? And I said, it's called a book. And she said, oh, that sounds scary. And I said, it won't be, trust me. So I sent her 1696 and the waiver application, and she called up the day after she got it. She goes, I don't understand this form that says I'm supposed to put my address and your address on here. That's the 1696. So we've got a lot of talking to do. All right. Other
does it
issues
matter?
that
Does it matter how long? Does it matter how long you're in jail? Is it a weekend? Does that trigger?
Oh,
it,
weekend
or-
won't count. No, weekend won't count.
Susan, if I could just interrupt quick, this is Kelly. I'm going to launch the first of the CLE polls. Susan and Becky, you can just click it off your screen. Just a reminder, anyone that signs into a webinar using somebody else's link is going to show up with that person's name. And for CLE purposes, I won't be able to give you credit if you don't use your actual name. So if you hover to the right of your name, there should be a button, I think more it says, and you're actually able to rename yourself. So it's always better to have your name on there. So I'll leave the poll up for about another minute and a half. Thanks.
Margaret, you were using my name.
Yes, it was an exigent circumstance. Apologies.
It's okay. I'm glad Kelly saw you do that so she could get you credits.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody gets credits.
Thank you, Kelly.
Okay. Why being hospitalized? If you're in the hospital for over a month, it's going to affect your eligibility. All these things are month by month things. So the thing about the being in jail, if you're in jail for a week, won't affect it. You're in jail for 6 months, it will affect it. That kind of thing. Remember, SSI means tested, month by month determination.
I'm just gonna pop in just so I put in 2 questions. So
Yeah.
But so thanks for the month long. I think for the first question.
Sure.
So what if I'm in jail for like several months, like a county jail, and then at trial I'm acquitted? So I have technically been innocent, but have been incarcerated for several months.
Yeah, it's the incarceration. It's not the guilt or innocence. Good question, though.
Okay, is that like okay?
Yes, it's the fact that you are receiving free room and board. Free, that's not my definition of free, but Social Security thinks it's free.
Luxurious, thanks.
I think you know where that would be. I think you should be paid back. I'm with Governor Wolf on that one. Okay, next slide.
For some reason, my computer gets tired if we don't change it.
I get tired too, Becky.
My computer's like, no, I'm not. I don't want to move. Okay, there you go.
Okay, this is one of my favorites. Back in the I think I was 96 under welfare reform. This thing called if you're a fleeing felon, you're no longer going to be eligible for SSI. And it's been my experience that the local offices back then took this literally. They would just run criminal checks on everybody that they could. And if there was a warrant outstanding, they would send you a notice saying you are no longer eligible because you are a fleeing felon. And I remember dealing with district attorneys in Texas and in some other states about them, withdrawing the warrant just so my clients could get back on SSI. I mean, they took it literally. Becky, do you remember these days?
I do.
It was
for a while,
horrible.
yeah, we spent a lot of time on fleeing felons.
Yes. And
Um,
no one was ever fleeing.
Right. Child
No one was
support
ever fleeing. It was
warrants.
like, they have to be
Yeah.
fleeing, not just a felon. No, no, no. If there's a warrant, they're fleeing. It's like, okay, whatever. So this provision still exists, but I haven't seen it acted on in a couple of decades now.
Yeah, I
Anyone
haven't
else out there?
I think they were sued because of all the overreaching, and they reached a settlement, and I think they really are a little shy now from I used to have to deal with a lot of places in Georgia,
Yep.
like
Also, other southern states. Yep.
little petty larceny
Yep.
and that the person, just didn't show up in court for, and a bench warrant was issued, or sometimes it was a traffic ticket.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember the name of the case, but it's pretty I should remember it, but I don't. And it actually outlined all the points that they needed to have in order to stop somebody's payments, and that put a stop to most all of them.
Yeah. I mean, those were horrible, horrible years.
Yeah.
Just when it comes to subsidized housing, they also have the same rule, but I've never seen any housing authority going after it like Social Security did. I mean, they were chomping at the bit. Okay. Those are when you don't get it. Here's our things that you must tell your Social Security office if any of these happen. You have a change in any of these things. So if your address changes, the number of people in your household change, you have a new resource or you got rid of a resource. Actually, they don't really want to know that unless you have a new resource. Change in marital status, income. Oh yeah, and medical improvement. You're supposed to call and say, hey, Social Security, I think I've improved medically. I'm able to go back to work now. Why don't you just cut me off? See this every day, every day. Admission or discharge into any of those institutions, which we just went over. Or, hey, I'm a fleeing felon. Okay, and the regulations are as stated. Just remember, when it comes to SSI, means tested, everything matters. Nothing gets swept under the rug. All right, next.
Well, let me ask a question about
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
How are the clients supposed to do it? In the past, a lot of our clients would have gone to the office and said, my address changed. I got a job. What should they do now? What's the best way to contact the local office?
Either online or using the local phone number, which are all 866 numbers anyway anymore. I don't know how the local offices really work. I know that somebody is there, but I know that most of the folks, at least where I'm at, are working from home. How should a client verify these attempts? Good question. Keep a log. I called at 1:06 p.m. on 2/23/21 and left a message stating,
Or spoke to this particular person?
right.
But
And
they
it's
do.
a lot. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, I've had lots of clients try to change their address with Social Security. It didn't work.
Yeah.
Like in fact, I had a client who's on a continuing disability review, and she didn't get the notice for the hearing because they sent it to New Jersey, where she previously lived. She had come to the local Reading office and told them her new address. They sent her a notice, an acknowledgement, a whole bunch of things. But after that, all went to New Jersey, and then they cut her off. and we had to go to the appeals council to get it kicked back and get her benefits reinstated. And she had done what she was supposed to do, but it still didn't take.
Well, Social Security is the biggest bureaucracy. And these things happen a lot, unfortunately. Okay, so for SSI, if you're entitled to, you're found eligible, you get your back payment for the months covered in one lump sum. Not so with SSI. For reasons I will not comment upon, our federal government thinks that poor people don't need a bunch of money all at once. We're going to distribute an installment every 6 months. Let's say there was an easy $9,000 back balance. They'll get 3,000 6 months, 3,000 another 6 months down the road, and then the last 3,000 6 months down the road. Always keeping them under the poverty line. Questions, concerns?
I see you've written there about dire need. Occasionally, my client, if they have something directly related to their disability that they wish to purchase, they're able to send a letter. Back in the day, you could go to the office, but now it's a letter form saying, you know, I need a new handicap accessible vehicle. Here's its price. Please release me, you know, my entire back pay so I can pay for it. Some folks want to buy you know, a handicap accessible little condo, or at least make a down payment on one. So those things are acceptable usually.
I have found that they're actually more open to more than just disability related things. I'm working on a client's case now. We got a favorable decision in October of last year, and we're still waiting on her lump sum.
Yeah.
So I got a hold of the woman in our local office and talk about bureaucracy. She said, oh, I put that back in January, on January 17th. Oh, and I just looked at it and it was stuck. What's stuck? Okay, something in her computer system was stuck, so it didn't get sent to the payment center. So, you know, and the client's husband is working at McDonald's. They've got 3 kids. There's got judgments against them, quite a few. His check is about to be garnished. And so, you know, I said, can you put a dire need on this? And the woman said, of course I will. So that was done, and hopefully we'll have some cash in this woman's hand.
So do you think that when people finally get the bills, well, I guess they're getting them already, but when these moratoriums, like the utility moratoriums and the rent moratoriums finally expire and people have gigantic utility bills and gigantic rent, that'll be a dire need situation?
Oh, it better be.
Yeah, should be.
It better be. Yeah.
Even in the past, anything to keep you in your home was always considered a dire need. And if you could show eviction process, they would, you know,
release some money. Yeah.
Right.
Dire need, I don't know if you were going to talk about this generally, Susan, but dire need applies not just with respect to installments. It also applies if you're asking to get a hearing to begin with, or asking to move the case to begin with. If you have an eviction situation or some other about to be homeless type of situation, you can make a request to move it because of dire need.
Sure. Yep. Comes in all kinds of places.
While they prefer you have medical expenses, if you have found housing and you need money for your security deposit, first month's rent, they would consider that dire need too.
Yes.
So you can get that advance for that reason.
Yeah, use your imagination when it comes to this, you know? All they can say is no. Okay, anything else on lump sum payments, installments? Sometimes the local office will call them underpayments, past due benefits. I like to call them lump sums. because it's the only time in our clients' lives where they actually have a chunk of change.
Actually, I had a quick question. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Interrupt.
And I do apologize. You may have answered it, but is there a specific dire need form, or do you just make that request by letter?
Yeah, letter, or if I know the person well enough, I'll just say, look, here's what's going on. And she'll say, okay, I'll put a dire need on that.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends. You know, I've been doing this for a long time. So, you know, the people in the Social Security office know me. And they know I'm not going to call up and just, you know, start making up BS stories about this client needs this, because client needs that. So, you know, if you have credibility with them, you know, they will treat you with respect as well.
I was able to move a case one time on dire need with a prescription pad note by the doctor that my client was terminal and
Yeah.
it was only expected to live for a few more months.
Yeah. My best dire need case was to request a hearing get moved up. Client was in Danville, had one leg amputated. The hearing was scheduled for like the following month. The second leg was amputated 2 days before the hearing. The judge called me and said, I don't even want this hearing. I'm paying it. He died before this first lump sum check came or his first check came. And there was no family member to get the benefits. Da-da-da. Okay, so then. I like Linda's pretty picture of this because she had 2110 everywhere.
Well, maybe when we're done with this, we can go back and look at all the pretty pictures.
Yeah,
by way of review.
we'll flip through that. You can see
Right.
how pretty she made it. Okay, so if you're living by yourself and you are receiving SSI, the great state of PA is going to pay you an extra $21.10. What's the married couple this year? Anyone know? Becky? Sam?
Oh, don't know.
Jacob? It's like 30 something. Okay. And
Next.
I do have to tell you, these citations,
3330.
3330. I know it was 30 something. Okay. These citations, I'm old school. I went to law school. We didn't have computers. So I used my 2008 version of the Social Security CFR. So hopefully the laws haven't changed or the citations haven't changed. All right, next, Beck. Okay, automatic eligibility. Even if you get $1 in SSI, you are automatically eligible for medical assistance. Medicaid throughout the country, medical assistance in Pennsylvania. This is the full coverage. It's the best coverage you can get in PA. So just remember that hand in hand with SSI comes your medical card. Next. Overpayments. We've mentioned them a few times and they do exist, and they do exist more often than I would rather deal with. You have the citations there. It's the claimant's burden to prove that they are without fault and they can't afford to pay it back. Okay. It's usually the without fault that our clients have problems with. Why didn't you report that winnings of lottery jackpot? Why didn't you report these bingo winnings back in 2 months ago? Why didn't you? I told you the brief story about the one I just had, where he was thinking that the money that was coming onto his card was for his disability related expenses. They said, nah, we don't buy it. So you've got to be without fault and unable to pay. I'm waiting for an ALJ hearing for a client of mine who underwent 18 CDR, and he was found no longer disabled as an adult, and his mother chose to get paid benefits paid pending. So they have charged him with a fault overpayment. while receiving benefits paid pending before an ALJ hearing.
Wow, that's
Now,
terrible.
it's unreal. And my question to you folks who are doing this, are you guys seeing this happen?
There are actually special rules for that, the statutory benefit continuation, where
Right?
it's not as fault as long as you're
A good faith
seeking-
effort.
Yeah, good faith.
Correct.
So I mean, they'd have to show he was skipping CEs or something, or not providing
Right.
evidence of his disability, or flat out know he wasn't disabled anymore.
Right. And none of that is true with this particular case.
Yeah,
Jen,
because
are you
that's a,
seeing any of this stuff?
Can I jump in here for this?
Please
too?
do.
This is something that we saw a lot and we've taken a lot of action on it. And I know that there's also in the regs and the POMs, there's authority that says that they're not allowed to issue overpayments for SBC when the appeal is continuing. So if I heard you right, you said you were still waiting for the ALJ
Yeah.
hearing.
Yeah.
So he should
No,
have
no,
been
no, no, no.
receiving those.
Let me correct myself. We're waiting for the ALJ hearing on the waiver.
On the waiver.
Yes.
Okay, so this wasn't like based on a cessation.
No, he was, they found the overpayment based on his receipt of aid paid pending. And then we requested a waiver and they said, no, you're with fault. So now we're waiting on an ALJ hearing on the waiver.
If folks want to send those
I was-
cases to me, we've talked to SSA about them about a training issue because it's a national training issue. It came up, there's a few work groups that SSA is convening with some advocates from around the country, like different geographic representation. And so this was something that we flagged for them. I know, Susan, you had told me that you had an issue and I raised that this was happening in Altoona.
Yeah.
But if folks are still seeing this or run into problems like this, Susan, you're welcome to write this up for me and I can
Sure.
forward it to SSA.
Okay.
I'm happy to, because you shouldn't go to a hearing on this. They should step in on this.
Yeah.
And we have sent them a case from CLS. And if others want to email me about this, I am really happy to kind of keep pushing on this, because our hope is that SSA is going to do another batch of training and maybe like a staff memo that reminds people of the rules.
Great. Sure.
I always,
Oh, that's nasty. Carrie Smith says, I've had SSA issue a notice saying they're going to start recoupment even though there's a pending waiver. Has anyone seen them actually start recouping? Rather than saying they're going to recoup?
I have seen a whole lot of things.
Well, do tell.
I mean, it just from them recouping benefits after a waiver has been filed, or a request for reconsideration, or just any form of appeal, down to them saying like just the nastiest things to clients, and not have necessarily been there for those discussions, but I've had clients come back and tell me that there was questioning as to why clients are receiving free legal services, emphasis on free, why clients haven't made attempts to learn the English language, and just all types of very nasty things. And so I've seen a lot.
Yeah. Yep. Jen, were you going to add something?
I was just going to add that we've had a number of cases where SSA starts recouping on overpayments before they are mature, like early, kind of like you're describing. And typically, I mean, we even have a draft protest letter. Like, we don't file a waiver. We just file a letter being like, this is a premature overpayment waiver. And usually those get taken care of. But it happens more often than it should, for
Yeah.
sure.
I know I have a copy of that letter, but you might want to share it with the group.
Sure.
That would be great.
and don't forget the administrative waivers for,
Yeah. Small overpayments.
is it under 2,000?
No,
Something like that.
1,000.
1,000.
yeah.
1,000.
I once got an overpayment letter for $4.25.
I've
And
had some
I
small
said-
ones.
You know what I said? F you. And I threw it-
And did you write the Palms number when you said the FU? Because I think that's required.
It was unreal. I was like, are you kidding me?
Most claims reps don't know what the administrative waiver procedure is, and they will continue to insist that your client fill out the whole waiver form and go through the whole process,
Yeah.
which they're not supposed to have to do. They just don't know what the rule is.
Yeah.
I think they've also taken the SSI one out of view. Like when you try and find the Palms provision, I don't think it's online anymore.
Under that 2260.30.
Yeah.
Jacob, are you referring to the overpayment thing or SSI totally?
Just the administrative waiver.
The administrative
It was
waiver.
either for Title II or Title 16. I was looking for it.
Yeah.
I only had it in previous letters. When I went to check it, it wasn't there anymore.
Huh. It exists. So when it comes to overpayments, your issues can be small or they can be all over the gamut.
There's also
Again-
a rule, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Bill.
There's also a rule on a CDR case. It says if the client is actively participating in their own appeal, which just means, cooperating with us,
Mhm.
no overpayment notice should be issued. And they've done it in our local office, and I sent them a copy and they never withdrew it, just refused, just ignored it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the issue that Jen was referring to, sending a premature notice.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many rules they either don't know or don't care. I think our new supervisor that got me a break in that appeal that I circulated on good cause being very late. She might be helpful, but the people in the past were not. Management didn't care.
All right, anything else on overpayments? If you think, I didn't put anything for underpayments, but I don't see those very often at all. Those are pretty rare. But they exist in the regulations, so somebody must think that it is possible to happen.
I actually I do a lot of overpayment cases, but they're usually settled at the field office.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to my first ALJ hearing on one. So wondering if anyone knew, are the ALJs, do they need to follow the Palms provisions? Because the local office just totally went off the rails and ignored multiple Palms about how they should determine whether my client was at fault. I'm wondering, once I get to the ALJ, can I cite the Palms? Because it's not as explicit in the CFR about what I'm trying to get done.
Technically, I don't know, but I would, because, even though the judges are supposed to go by Helix, there's nothing in there about overpayments. I don't know. What do you think, Jen? Kristen?
I've
Becky?
always cited them and referred to them in my briefs.
Right.
Okay.
I did an immigration, was the person, actually Jen and you all helped with that. And that was, I cited Palms at the ALJ level because that's where it was discussed.
Okay. That would be my gut, yeah. Oh, this is about the terminal woman.
Yes. She did get her $10,000 before she died. So thank you, Jen and Susan.
All right, anything more on overpayments? Doug Campbell, I know you wanted to talk some. Doug? Oh, Doug left the office and now I can see his desk is empty. He specifically told me he wanted to talk about overpayments today. All right, everybody, 30 seconds. Let's stand up and stretch.
Jeez.
Must be the 7th inning. Oh.
We moving on, Susan?
Yeah, I wanted to give Doug time. Oh, now
Oh,
he
okay.
turned, now
He's
he
back?
turned his camera off. Oh, I have control. I can put everybody's camera on and make you all suffer.
I have a question. I
Sure.
have a client that has the Social Security said that he received a $50,000 overpayment. So it's because he worked, but he thought it was all cleared up back in 2018, and then they came back to him, and they've asked him for now the past 6 years for his W-2 forms. He was only able to provide them for the past 4. I'm just kind of, I think, where do I need to start with this?
Okay, first,
to
is
help
it
him?
is it a Title II or Title 16 overpayment, SSD or SSI?
Let me pull that up. Let
Yep.
me, it just says Social Security retirement.
Okay, retired. No, that's his current income, maybe.
Yeah.
Do you have the do you have a notice?
No, I don't think he sent me the, hold on, I might have that. Here we go. I got it. I'm pulling it up.
Okay.
Come on. Here we go. It's a photo so that he sent me of it. Retirement, survivors and disability insurance, your benefits. You no longer qualify for benefits beginning January 2020.
Because
it says we will pay you a monthly check of $2,205 until we start to collect the overpayment. And then it talks about you should refund this overpayment of $50,000 within 30 days. Please make your check payable
yeah,
to
I know,
Social Security
I know, I laugh too every
Administration.
time I read that.
And send it to us in an enclosed envelope.
Yeah. All right, Melissa,
so-
here's what I would do if I were in your shoes. I would get
Okay.
him to sign a 1696 and submit that to your local office.
Right.
And you
Okay.
want
Yep.
a copy of the original overpayment letter,
Okay.
because then you'll know where to start. Because right now, you need to find out what benefit was overpaid, the basis of the overpayment, and all those, you know, good little things that you need to do
Okay.
any research on.
Okay. And I think I already sent the 1696 form in.
Okay.
So I think I just need to make sure that they received it and attached it to his file. Because I'm at Neighborhood Legal Services in Pittsburgh, and
Okay.
I'm starting to get a lot of these overpayments.
Yeah.
But this is the largest one I've ever received for $50,000.
Yeah.
But can they go back 6 years?
Well,
And
it
asking
depends.
for
Again,
his-
it's going to depend on the basis for the overpayment, what they're
Okay.
alleging. So I guess
Okay.
start there, and then So they're wanting his W-2s that far back?
I think so.
Okay.
And I have in our notes, it's just SSD from our intake. That
Okay.
was what they gave me, was just SSD.
See it with your own eyes.
Oh, sorry, he was SSDI at the time.
Okay, Social Security Disability. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's Title II.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And why does that make a difference, if the difference between the SSI and then SSDI?
Well, if you wait to the next slide, you'll find out.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay,
Thanks.
here's the difference.
you.
SSI, max recovery is 10% of your current benefit. In other words, Melissa, he better write that check fast. I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. Be aware that Social Security can and does cross recover. In other words, if someone's on SSI and on SSD and there's an overpayment in one or the other, they can dip into the other's check and cross over and recoup.
So what if there is no check? You have a guy who's working and he's not getting benefits. What, if anything, does Social Security do?
Well, eventually it'll be a tax intercept, but that's going to be eventually. It's not going to happen, you know, this year.
You can also garnish wages.
Yeah, there's a limit to that too. It depends on, you know, if you're just making a minimum wage, you always have the equitable argument of, you know, backing off on that as well. I've made that argument before. Bankruptcy will discharge overpayments. Good question. James, thank you for that question. Doug Campbell, are you back with us? Doug Campbell. Okay, he's gonna have to talk to me by himself then. All right, any more on overpayments? We could spend a day or two or three on overpayments. These are just issues for issue spotting purposes only. Okay, Becky, next slide, please.
Could I just ask one more question? That 10%, what was the 10%?
SSI. If the person is on SSI, that's the most they can take from their check.
Oh, okay.
70 something bucks. Yeah.
Thank
Minus
you.
the 20, minus the 2110. So they can't take 10% of that $21.10 either.
But for your person who's on Title II, they can take the whole check.
They usually don't, but they could.
They don't usually? You usually have to ask them not to, is my experience. So they'll start off taking the whole check and then you have to intercede there.
Well, maybe I'm just lucky. Actually, I don't have a lot of Title II only cases. So maybe I don't see it because I just don't have them.
Our organization doesn't have an income limit, so I do a lot of.
Who are you with?
The AIDS Law Project.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you wouldn't. Yeah.
So we,
Yeah, and ours does 125% of poverty. So I think at least in my office, we don't even take a Title II only case for representation at ALJ. There has to be at least an SSI claim with it.
We take the overpayment cases because no
Yes.
one else will take them.
Right,
And,
we do too.
And yes, they will stop your check. You have to fill out a form that you agree, even while your appeal and waiver is pending, to pay back $100, that they can withhold $100 each month out of your check. Without that form, your client's not going to get $1.
Dual eligibles can get down to $10 a month repayments.
Yeah, I'm talking about just pure SSDs. Title.
All right. Anything more on overpayments? Doug Campbell, this is your last chance. Okay. All right. This only applies to Title II benefits, and that's the date last insured. I think I mentioned it early on. Sometimes you'll be at a hearing, well, they're by phone now. So let's go back before March of last year. You're at the hearing. The judge says, let's go off the record. He says, counsel, come up here, please. And you go up and he says, ask your claimant if they'd be willing to amend their onset date to X, Y, and Z. And so first thing you want to do is make sure that date last insured, what that is, because you do not want to amend the onset date if there's a possibility of getting Social Security disability, Title II. If you're going to screw that claim up by amending to a date after date last insured. Questions? Everybody got that one?
So Susan, where do you find the date last insured in a
Well, if you're
file?
an ERE, as soon as you go to your claimant's homepage on the ERE, it's going to have date of application, DLI, which is date last insured, and it'll usually end with be December of some year. It also has if it's a dual claim or not, and the last time that the file was updated. So that's information you get right from your client's home screen. Anything else on DLI? All right, next slide. All right, only for Title II, there are what's called ancillary benefits. Becky, if you just go to the next slide, please. These are the different benefits that are available. I have citations for each of them. The little definitions that I give are just like really blurbs of what the regulations require. I would definitely start with this piece of paper, but then go directly to the regulation to delve into more. I put this together, oh God, probably 25 years ago. So it's still good. It's still good law. But as I put my asterisk, check regulations for more eligibility. And PIA, in case you're wondering, stands for primary insurance amount. These are Title II benefits. Again, only for Title II. These benefits don't go with an SSI claim. Melissa's intrigued. She's like saying, what's my guy on?
Did you send this out to us after the?
Yeah, I'm going to send you the printified version. I'll send it to Kelly, who will send it to all those on the webinar. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to start some miscellaneous, I think. Okay, go ahead, Beck. Okay. We've got a little bit of time left, and there's more than this page than what I forgot to put on it. I thought of more ideas and more things to add after the final version was done. Non-English speakers, Social Security must provide them with free translators for hearings. They are a translator. They're not going to be language line or anything else. So if you have a non-English speaker, make sure that you tell them what country and what dialect, if that's appropriate as well. Again, back in the 90s, we had a big influx of Russians to my area in the center of the state. And I did many hearings for SSI with Russian translators. And I only learned a couple words, one being yet, N-I-E-T. And be careful when you're with your translators, because the judge will definitely catch them if they're doing this. The judge will ask them a yes or no question, and the translator will go on for a couple minutes, and then the client goes on for another 30 seconds, and then the answer is no. And so the judge wants to know, all right, what all did you guys talk about here? So be careful of those questions. I always get a kick out of them because you know that there's a lot more going on than no. Reopening a case, you can, you can do that within 2 years if you have a prior claim that you'd like to reopen. There are acceptable medical sources and unacceptable medical sources. There is a citation for this, but the version that this is in does not have that citation. What version I will send you will have the citation. Basically, it's got to be someone who has the knowledge and the expertise and the wherewithal to read laboratory studies, make medical findings, that kind of thing. Chiropractors are not acceptable medical sources. Almost all of my clients say, who are you going to for treatment? Oh, my chiropractor. I'm there every week. Well, who else besides your chiropractor? Well, I go to my doctor twice a year. Okay, we got a problem here. We got a problem proving disability if you're only seeing a chiropractor. And then I try to explain to them that under the regulations, that is not an acceptable medical source. And of course, they argue with me, but he does wonders for my back. Careful of those. If someone does not go to the doctor regularly, and there's a lot of people like that, or Social Security thinks they need some type of specialized exam, whether it be physical or psychological, they will pay for a consultative exam. I know many of us who attend meetings with BDD, which is the name of our local state agency that provides the initial determination, Bureau of Disability Determination. We have issues with the consultatives that they use. They are from a group called IMA. Everybody heard of IMA? If you've been doing this, if you have not been doing this for a while, you haven't heard of IMA, be careful with IMA. Always check their credentials and that sort of thing. Other issues. If a child is on SSI, that's what's missing here. It's on the printified version. Representative payees. Children need to have a rep payee. Generally, that's their parent or legal guardian. And the parent, let's say it's a parent, they have to make a dedicated account for that child. In other words, they have to have a separate account for the child's benefits. And they are required to use that money for the current maintenance of the client. Okay. Some adults are unable to manage their benefits as well, their finances, and that could either be due to mental health, psychological, or physical disabilities. Usually they would want somebody, that they trust to be the rep payee. More and more what we're seeing statewide or countrywide is agencies acting as rep payees. They get a fee for every person that they serve as rep payee for. Used to be $35. I don't know what it's up to these days. And that's per person. I already mentioned the POMs. Always go to the POMs. When you have any SSI related issues or anything weird, like Melissa, that you have weird coming on, you probably want to check with the POMs in your case. When it comes to Social Security disability, there is what's called a 5-month waiting period. In other words, you don't get paid for the first 5 months. Even though the judge says you became disabled in January of 2020, you don't get paid for the first 5 months. That's the waiting period. Just recently, I believe last month or the month before, they allowed, oh, help me out, Kristen. What disease is it that gets, doesn't have to wait the 5 months now? It's something terminal.
Wait, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah.
I missed the end of the question.
The 5-month waiting period.
What?
The 5-month waiting period for benefits to start for SSD no longer applies to, is it ALS?
I'm looking at people nod their heads. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
I'm looking at Joan,
So,
who's the MVP. Who knows?
it's a terrible disease to have. I don't wish it at anybody, but you don't have to wait your 5 months. Boy, Nice, huh? Talk a little bit about doing hearings. Excuse me, I need to wet my whistle. Pre-pandemic, they were all in person. Shortly before the pandemic started, they were trying to get people to do video hearings. And I kicked and fought and said, no, I want my in-person hearings, because one of my very few hearings that I did via video, the judge never looked up and looked at my claimant. I thought that was just terribly wrong at the time. And now I'm dying to have a video hearing because we've been doing them all by phone and it really sucks. So you know that your judge is not going to be looking at your claimant. And so credibility goes all into the written, into the oral word. And it's really tough. It's tough for everybody. I haven't met anyone yet who likes doing telephone hearings. Except Sarah. Sarah might like doing phone hearings. She said, so going back to in-person hearings, I have found that judges, at least the judges I practiced before, would prefer that you get to the point, make your points, and get out. I am that way in life. I'm that way practicing law. I don't like to think that I'm being paid by the word. I know some private attorneys, they think they have to put on a show for their client, so they're in there for 2 hours, hour and 45 minutes. It's like, no, you don't need to be in there that long. So like I said, score your points when you can, get out, make any arguments you have, and hope for the best. I'd like to open up the floor to those who are practicing and talk about remote phone hearings. Jacob, do you actually handle cases or do you just do the financial parts afterwards?
I don't do initial claims. I only do post eligibility.
Okay.
I rarely ever go to any hearings. For post eligibility work, right? If I can't get it solved at the field office, I feel like I failed.
Okay.
Or the fail.
Sure.
In most of the cases, the field office has failed.
Right.
But in general, this is the first time I've ever had to take a waiver case, appeal it to an ALJ hearing, because they were just, my client reported she had gone back to work. She had the form that she reported that she went back to work. She called the national number. They told her about her trial work period. Now that's available to her. But then it turns out in her particular case, she had used her trial work period 20 years earlier.
Oh my.
You only get one. So the minute she worked SGA, she was incurring an overpayment. And when we figured out that she'd used her trial work period, we immediately asked them to stop paying her. But they won't forgive the $5,000.
Yeah.
The added part of that is, she obviously can afford to pay it back. So we also have to come up with an against equity and good conscience argument. And she had been paying for private health insurance. So I think that's going to be when she would have been eligible for MAUD on top of her Medicare.
Right.
So that's the part I thought they would give me grief about, but they didn't even get past the fault. It's just like,
well, yep.
This is a university city.
What arguments do you make in a fault case? How do you try and get around the fault?
It's usually pretty hard. If your client needs proof that they reported whatever the change was. Other than that, if you don't have that, it's pretty tough. So, I do a lot of negotiations for repayment plans more than actual waivers.
Yeah.
Or getting them out of the overpayment in the first place and appealing. I do mostly back to work things. A lot of our clients with medication do better and are able to return to work. So we see that a lot in our practice.
Are overpayments dischargeable in a bankruptcy?
Yes.
So do we refer people?
I normally don't. If that's, if that's the only bad debt that's hurting them.
Well, my overpayments are huge. I mean, 19,000, just huge amounts of money. I think it's because they take so long to do a financial review.
Yeah.
Person's been in trouble for years.
Social Security in general is a great place to owe your money to, right? Because they're not going to hit you with late payments, and there's no interest being
Interest, yeah.
charged to the overpayments. It's, if you're on SSI, you just can usually get it down to a $10 payment plan for, that will last 600 years.
Yeah.
Although they were having trouble processing ones that went out past 2050 for a while, but I haven't seen that recently. Where they kept booting people off $10 payment plans.
All right, Melissa, you heard 19,000. You wish your guy had $19,000 overpayment instead of 50, huh?
Largest one I've seen is 199,000.
Oh, God. Oh, that would hurt. Okay, issues related to phone hearings in particular. Anybody? Open.
I have done one phone hearing, SSI hearing, and I knew it was going to be terrible because the face-to-face hearings are terrible when there is an interpreter.
Yeah.
But my advice probably for phone hearings where there is an interpreter would just be to not do them. I would, if I could go back and just have that hearing postponed until we could do it normally. I probably would have just done that because the phone hearing was that terrible. And I had a very patient judge who's patient in most of the hearings that we do, but even her patience during that hearing started to run very low. So.
Yep.
So I've done a number of telephone hearings, and the one I had an interpreter issue where my witness was Spanish speaking, and I had asked in advance for an interpreter, but it didn't happen. It was the mom of a case of a young woman who had been on disability for years, and then she was kicked off at age 18 redetermination, and then later reapplied. Not much later, she was like 23. And it was difficult because my witness, the grandma, spoke a little English, but not very much. And the judge pressured us to go forward anyway. So it was, you can't see people. So for my client, she comes across as very young. I mean, she's 23, but she comes across like a 5-year-old. And that just doesn't come across in a hearing. But they're desperate for money. And the cases where I didn't agree to a telephone hearing back in March, they're still pending. Yeah. So, they're not really at the dire need level because they're, but they're still waiting over a year to get a hearing. That's a problem.
Other people's experience?
I want to just say, and I hope, I'm assuming that others are doing this too. I mean, I think, Susan, in the telephone hearing and Becky, I mean, they're like, we've had various degrees of success depending on the judge and the advocate and the client and lots to think about. I mean, I think we've taken the position for CDRs and age 18s, we're putting a lot of resources into getting people into pay status, into statutory benefit continuation status. And then we aren't doing any hearings. And I guess I just want to say that in case other folks are kind of thinking about, I think we, depending on whether our client's limited English proficient, I saw Jen just come on, and Jen may want to talk more because I know she's done tons and tons of phone hearings and may have thoughts about it. But for folks who are in pay status, we're just we're saying no to everything. And that's a very across the board strategic choice we're making. And so if you haven't kind of gotten to that level of game theory or whatever, I just wanted to say that really overtly for everybody on the call.
Yeah, good point.
I'm sorry, on that point that was just made was, so if you have someone that's a age 18 redetermination is to continue the benefits and then to wait for the in-person hearings? Because that's what I've been doing, but I wasn't sure if, because the
Yeah.
in-person would be the best for the client anyway to make, for them hopefully be granted. Is that what you were just saying?
Yeah, I mean, just saying that, like, there's never a reason if you can get if somebody's in pay status, never a reason to consent to a phone hearing, right? Like, I know everybody's sort of balancing like the urgency for the client and not wanting to wait and feeling like trying to get money in their hands as quickly as possible and all of those really important things. And I know, you know, there's lots of people who are doing that calculation and maybe want to say more, but if they are in active pay status, the answer is always no. Like, keep them in. If you have to do an overpayment waiver in a year, okay, we'll do an overpayment waiver in a year, but let's like keep their benefits on. And the other thing I'll just say is that Social Security is being very, very permissive about good cause. So if people missed the 15 days, if they can assert a COVID related reason, like they didn't get their mail in time, they called, they didn't know what to do because the office was closed, right? Like, there's lots and lots of reasons why people might not be able to appeal within 15 days that have to do with COVID. And as long as they are able to assert a COVID related reason, Social Security is supposed to be granting good cause to do statutory benefits continuation. And so we're taking a fair number, and I'm assuming a lot of your practices are too, taking a lot of CDRs and age 18 cases, even if they're not in pay status, and we're putting our resources in getting them into pay status and then just sort of putting the case on hold. And also, it's also a good time, you know, if folks' cases are on, if people have fallen out of treatment because of the pandemic, it also gives folks some time to get back in treatment, right? So our legal services resources are going into getting people's benefits reopened pending the hearing, and in like really pushing them and encouraging them to get hooked up with treatment and not with the hearing piece of things.
Kristen, can I ask you a question about that? I have a continuing disability review case. She's been in pay status since 2017. And we haven't gotten that. I mean, we actually did have a hearing recently, and she has another hearing scheduled. Do you have, and we discussed it, and she wanted to go forward. She keeps falling off the face of the earth and missing things, and she wanted to just kind of finish it because she has trouble staying connected to having an address that you can send things to and that kind of thing. But would you have any limit to your policy of keeping them in pay status if it goes on 6 years, 7 years? I mean, however long it takes, you'd leave them in pay status.
No, I feel great about that. I feel like that's 6 years of benefits. Hooray. I mean, I would do it. I mean, I feel like there's an overpayment waiver, right? And there's like strategies around that. But I mean, I don't know, maybe folks are free to disagree with me. I feel like,
no, I think it makes sense.
These are all made up rules, right? Like, this system is totally fake. And if these are the rules that we can use and be zealous advocates for our clients to keep them in their homes and keep their utilities on and keep food in the refrigerators, then I feel awesome about that.
Right. I mean, I think that makes sense. When this client came in, just what you're saying in terms of getting them in treatment, when she walked through my door last year, she wasn't getting any kind of treatment at all. Nothing. I mean, she'd been receiving benefits, but she had zero treatment. So we used the time we have gotten her back in treatment, and she has significant MRI findings, and none of those things would have happened if we hadn't worked with her to get her in treatment.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and you know, folks can kind of weigh in on this. I know we have a little bit of time. Like, I think, like, from a case acceptance standpoint, there are cases that people are coming in, and I'm not like, I don't feel like I think it's hard for me to justify expending very limited legal services resources in a pandemic to try to get somebody on benefits when it's really clear that the case maybe doesn't have merit or is not at all winnable. Because I feel like once we're on, right? Like, even if we don't have to do the hearing now, and even if we can get them on for 2 years, like, eventually we're going to have to put our like 30 hours of average of legal services time to like appropriately do the case, plus probably the overpayment waiver, which is going to take forever. And so I feel like if I'm like choosing between that case and another case, like I don't know that that's the case, even if like intellectually there's something to do, but we are advising people on how to like get, you know, we can't take your case, but please, you know, you can ask for a hearing, you can tell them that you need good cause because you missed this, you know, go to the hearing, et cetera, et cetera.
Just piggybacking on a few things that Kristen was saying, if you have someone who's in pay, the other reason you want to continue it to an in-person hearing is even if your client happens to be one of the lucky ones and they're getting treatment, I think we can all agree, particularly behavioral health, but really all treatment right now is pretty terrible. Like all these virtual appointments, I've done a ton of these audio hearings now and was feeling really, really low about it because my win rate has gone way down, which of course I track, which you shouldn't do. So don't do that.
Be quite
Recently
depressing.
data from the local offices have also recently been confirming that the allowance rate is way down, even for judges that are pretty good. And I hypothesize that a lot of it has to do that it's just really hard to justify allowances on some of these cases with the records that are coming in from right now. So if you have the ability to wait until either your client can have an in-person hearing, which I think makes a huge difference, or your client can get actual in-person treatment, I think that's something you need to consider. Now, obviously, there's lots of clients who can't wait. I think, Rebecca, you were talking about that before, and that is why I keep doing tons and tons of these hearings anyways, but it's hard, you know, or you have to have really good evidence already in the file.
I have a question. I do have a CDR case that's scheduled for a phone hearing in about 2 weeks. And I fully understand like the arguments for, counseling the client on sort of the trade-offs and kind of highlighting, why it's, the real factors weighing on the side of kind of postponing so that they have that certainty with their benefits. I have been struggling a little bit in counseling a client who's he's like 27 years old, but he has an intellectual disability, and his mom is very involved, and I think is very kind of interested in managing the process. And she kind of always, whenever we kind of have this conversation about, should we do the in-person or the phone, she's kind of always going back to, well, we don't have transportation, so I'd like to do the phone. And I mean, I try to kind of bring the, get her to kind of see the bigger picture. But I mean, does anyone have suggestions about how to manage that? Because really, I mean, at the end of the day, if I can't provide her a transportation option, I don't know how to come back with that to that objection.
Well, how far will it be from the client to your office in Harrisburg or wherever it's at?
About an hour.
No, miles.
Oh, whatever the distance between Breedsville and Harrisburg is. I don't know if you know that, Susan.
Probably be about 65.
I also think it depends on how strong the case is. I mean, not that we don't lose good cases all the time. Occasionally we win bad cases, but not as often. I feel like that's also a factor, right? Like if you feel like, I mean, it's ultimately the family's call, but if it's a bad case and you think they're going to get, or a marginal case with a bad judge, and you think or a marginal case with a marginal judge, and you think they're going to lose benefits, I mean, I'd rather have them save a little bit of the 6 months to a year of additional benefits you're going to get them by declining an in-person hearing and start their hearing transit fund than have them cut off in 3 months.
Right, really maybe kind of just pushing for them, like now that we're really getting close, the merits are like not looking good. Does anyone know if for CDRs, and maybe this varies by the local office, or the hearing office, but are they still doing sort of that call that they typically do for phone hearings a couple of, like 2 weeks beforehand, just to say, we just want to confirm you want to do a phone hearing?
I usually get like a, good.
I mean, they're sending out those letters that you need to fill out to affirmatively request it. And you can object to a phone hearing up until the day of the phone hearing. Like at the phone hearing, you and your client can object. I think
Okay.
judges would appreciate it if you do it beforehand. But if you're, if you are convincing your client to continue this case the day of, they have to take that. You have a right to object to these.
Okay, thank you everyone for those thoughts. That's helpful.
I just want to flag, I don't know, I'm sorry, Kelly, I don't know if we're like stepping on like a pole or whatever, but when I get in front of ALJs I've worked with for years and the case has no merits, any suggestions on how you'd respond if a judge challenges you on why the phone hearing was denied?
My claimant had every right to object.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, my client was more comfortable, or they thought that this, they thought that, I would just say more comfortable, right? Like lots of people are uncomfortable with phone hearings.
Exactly. I mean, if we don't like them, imagine what our clients do. One last thought that just popped in my head. I'm not sure if anyone else covered this yet, but if you put in a 1696 and your client gets scheduled for a hearing, you are stuck in that case. You cannot get out unless you die.
Well, you can ask for good cause to get
Well,
out,
it's got to be
but it's got to be, it can't be just, I decided this case isn't as good as I thought it was going to be.
right. Exactly. That's why I put that ending unless you die. But it's good cause is pretty high standard in this one.
However, the one thing that I just want to caveat is if you lose contact with your claimant, that
That's
is a
true.
reason to withdraw.
That's true.
Which
Yep.
I think is funny because it's like one of the few things that happens to us all the time and we never withdraw on that basis. But if you need to, it is one of the exceptions to withdrawing. Another thing, just one more thing I want to flag is if you are going to transfer the case, they'll let you do that as long as you say it in the letter. Like if you end up transferring it to a law school or a student or something else, do that.
Kelly, you got a poll for us?
Sorry, I was talking to you and I was muted.
You were talking to me.
Perfect timing, Susan. I was just about to break in. I'm going to
Okay.
launch the second of the CLE poll boxes. I will leave it up for 2 minutes. So attorneys requesting credit, you must respond to this poll. And Susan, feel free to continue on with the discussion while I have it up.
Doug Campbell, I see that you've rejoined us. You missed totally the overpayments part.
Yeah, sorry. I've been getting all the custody and landlord tenant stuff, and like these calls, I had to take them. So I'm sorry about that.
Well, did you have any specific questions? I'm leaving the last couple minutes to you.
No, I don't. I'm sure I'll be getting a hold of you personally. Not that you don't do enough already and all of that, but no, I don't have any because personally, I've not been getting many cases for quite some time, which I say that now, they'll all come through, but I don't really have anything.
Okay. I just wanted to
you,
give you a chance.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just got an email from Social Security, and just to swing it back to a non-disability issue that I've been having headaches over with several of my clients recently. It's one thing to be married, but if you are living with someone who is not your spouse, never call them your spouse.
That's exactly
because SSI, even if you're married to somebody else who you're not living with, will say they have a thing called holding out as married, where all of a sudden, if you even refer to a person as your spouse, whether or not they are or not, they will count them as your spouse. And it is hard to undo. So just a heads up if you ever hear your clients talking about spouses who aren't spouses.
I remember once I had to counsel a couple to divorce. because it would benefit them financially.
Makes even less sense for people who aren't actually married, who are
Yeah,
calling on as married.
I just want to make a plug for folks that we're going to be start gathering. I think Kelly had sent out an email. SSI advocates start gathering. I think we said the 4th Thursday of every month at 2:00. We're going to be kind of interspersing that with some CLE trainings. The first of these sessions is going to be, I know we have one more training next on Thursday, which I'm really excited about, with Sarah Lynch and Linda Cosme from CLS. But on Thursday, March 25th, we're going to be having our first of a series of meetings. And so it's going to be a blend. So we're going to be doing some appeals council training, an hour of appeals council training next at the first session, but we're also going to build in at least 30 minutes and sometimes more for like this kind of setting for people to bring questions. For like policy updates, you know, SSA is really pushing. There's a stimulus bill now, right? But there's going to be a second stimulus bill later this summer. And SSA is pushing to raise the income limits up to 100% of poverty and get rid of the marriage penalty, which includes getting rid of holding out, which is almost as exciting as getting rid of the marriage penalty. Lots of opportunities to do that kind of sharing to kind of keep people abreast of those developments and things that might make our jobs easier. So just a little plug to keep an eye out. I know Kelly had sent that around, and I'm sure it'll get circulated again as we get into March.
What do you mean by raising the income limits? Oh, sorry. What do you mean by raising the income limits to 100% of poverty?
So rather than the current whatever 794 or whatever, it'll go up to whatever the 100% of the poverty line will be the benefit. So the benefit will raise.
Oh, the benefit will go up.
And then a married couple would each get a full grant. There would be no married couple benefit, and also no, as I said, no holding out. We wouldn't have to deal with holding out. We wouldn't have to deal with like common law marriage from 30 years ago and all of that nonsense. It would just be if you are two people, there would be no spouse deeming.
Yeah. Remember early on, I mentioned that an SSI couple currently is at 83% of poverty. That would lift them up. So any increase is better.
Super
Anybody
exciting.
working to get rid of the resource
there's
limit?
lots of great stuff, like getting rid of dedicated accounts, trying to get rid of in-kind ISM, in-kind support maintenance.
Oh God.
Kinds of good stuff. Our jobs would be so easy. I feel like it might not all happen, but we can all the asset limit. Yep, getting rid of the asset limit is on the list. Imagine how easy our jobs would be. This training would be like 30 minutes. So we can all dare to dream. But we are going to be meeting monthly to kind of keep each other abreast about this stuff, but also bring questions like this, especially as the world starts to reopen. I feel like there's going to be all kinds of practice issues that we want to like brainstorm around. So just to make that plug while we have a couple minutes, to please mark your calendars so that we can kind of keep this community going.
And I appreciate those who turn their camera on. I know that you are pushed to page 1 so I can see all your pretty faces. But I live alone, and I was on medical leave from before the pandemic started until the pandemic had already started. So I love my cats, but they're just not the same as people. And I appreciate seeing faces. Thank you so much for hanging with me today. Okay, that about wraps it up. Are we ready, Kelly?
We are. If nobody has any other questions or comments, thanks, Susan. Thanks, Becky. Thanks, Kristen, Jen, everybody that chimed in. Thanks to all of you for your participation, and have a great rest of the day. Hopefully no more snow is in the immediate future.
Let's hope.
Yes, yes.
Take care, everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.